This is a severely underrated TV show that has been overlooked since its debut. Only 2 million people watched the entire first season during its premiere. In a time when many acclaimed shows are experiencing steep declines, Breaking Bad producer Vince Gilligan sees this as an opportunity to meticulously refine the plot. Finally, hard work pays off, and this show enters the Guinness World Records as the highest-rated TV series. In the last episode, Mike agreed to join Walter's team because he needed to pay the hush money Gus had promised to 9 inmates and wanted to leave a fortune for his granddaughter. It seems everyone has found a fitting reason to be part of this operation. Saul is still haunted by Mike's previous threat to break his legs. It was only after intense persuasion from Walter and Jesse that Saul reluctantly agreed to Mike's inclusion.
All right, let him in, Yule.
Saul tries to shake hands, but Mike doesn't give a damn. Then Mike set 3 ground rules for Walter. Walter would be responsible for production, and Mike would handle sales, with neither interfering in the other's work. Mike's tone suggested he considered himself the boss, but Walter, at this point, was completely dismissive. Outwardly, he agreed to Mike's terms, but he was secretly controlling the entire situation.
Hey, you're okay with that?
Yes. He handles the business, and I handle him.
Next, they went to inspect potential bases of operation. First, Saul introduced a cardboard box factory, but it was quickly vetoed by Walter because the steam and salt produced during the process of manufacturing prohibited substances would compromise the purity of the product. Then, Saul found a food processing plant, but Walter rejected it too due to the likelihood of government inspections. Finally, they arrived at a warehouse. While everyone thought it was unsuitable, Walter agreed to it.
It's perfect. What?
How are we gonna fit a lab in here?
Who said here?
Walter was inspired by the stacks of canvas there. In the U.S., when houses are infested with pests, homeowners hire professional exterminators for a few days, during which the owners are not at home. This is the perfect cover. The most dangerous place is indeed the safest. The once timid Walter would never have conceived such a bold idea. Saul explained that he had worked with this extermination team for 5 years. On the surface, they were pest control professionals, but in reality, they were a gang of thieves. They were smart, never committing theft during the extermination, but instead copying keys and waiting a long time before robbing the clients. Saul knew them well and said they could be easily bought.
So, we take a vote? Why?
For ease of equipment transfer, Jesse had Badger and Skinny customize large instrument cases. Badger and Skinny wanted to join the operation, but clearly, there were no positions for them at the moment. After Mike briefed the extermination team on specific precautions, Walter and Jesse began installing the equipment in the boxes. While discussing the installation, Andrea returned with her child. Although Walter and Andrea had met once before when Walter sought Jesse's help, Jesse still respectfully introduced Walter to Andrea. Seeing the child he had poisoned before, Walter showed no sign of guilt. Comparing this Walter to the kind-hearted man from the first season, his transformation into a ruthless character is truly astonishing. Just as Walter was about to make an excuse to leave, Andrea enthusiastically invited him to stay for dinner, and Walter gladly accepted. This gave him time alone with Brock. As Walter looked at Brock, can you guess what he was thinking? The next day, the extermination team took on a job. As soon as the homeowners left, Walter and Jesse arrived. Since they had already moved the equipment in, they could get straight to work. At that moment, a young man reminded Walter that there was a camera in the house, which he had turned off. Walter sees that the young man is pretty smart, so he asks him his name.
Todd, sir.
Todd is an important character in the 5th season, and this was just an early introduction. Then Walter and Jesse started their first job since Gus's death. Walter enjoyed the process immensely because it made him feel like he was utilizing his strengths. During a break, Walter and Jesse relaxed on the homeowner's couch, drinking beer and watching TV. Walter brought up Jesse's relationship with Andrea. Jesse said he was serious about her. Walter asked if Jesse had told Andrea about his work. Jesse clearly hadn't considered these questions. The cunning Walter continued to manipulate Jesse, saying that if Andrea truly loved him, she would understand everything he did. He insisted that since they had decided to be together, they should be honest with each other. Secrets only create distance. Walter said that if Andrea truly loved him, she would understand everything. Walter was indeed very manipulative. He knew Andrea wouldn't understand Jesse. just as Skyler never understood him. After hearing Walter's advice, Jesse fell into deep thought. Meanwhile, Marie visited her sister's car wash, and the sisters chatted. Marie mentioned that Hank had returned to work at the DEA. His colleagues who doubted his judgment about Saul were proven wrong. Marie also mentioned Walter, saying his 51st birthday was coming up soon. Skyler, who had been on edge lately, said she hadn't decided how to celebrate. Marie told Skyler that Walter was diagnosed with cancer around this time last year, and that it was the 1-year anniversary of his cancer battle, so he had to celebrate. Skyler's reaction surprised Marie. She lit a cigarette, despite having quit for years, and then she broke down.
Shut up!
What? I'm sorry. Please don't speak to me like that. I am simply saying that you
Will you
can't
shut up?
Hey.
Shut the hell up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Marie, thinking her sister was being mistreated, angrily went to confront Walter. Upon learning Marie's reason for visiting, Walter immediately put on an act, explaining that Skyler's recent emotional turmoil was due to Ted's accident that left him paralyzed. Walter claimed Skyler was under pressure because of this. Marie was completely confused. What did Ted's paralysis have to do with her sister? So, Walter casually mentioned Skyler's affair with Ted. He asked Marie to keep it a secret, saying he didn't want Hank to look down on him. Hearing this, Marie instantly felt sympathy for Walter. The conversation ended quickly, and as she left, Marie couldn't help but give Walter a comforting hug. Jesse was also in a bad mood, torn about whether to tell his girlfriend about his work after Walter's talk. Soon, the big day for splitting the money arrived. The 3 large piles of cash on the table looked substantial, but Walter quickly noticed 20% was missing. Mike explained that the 20% was for the driver. Walter was immediately unhappy, questioning why a driver would get so much, but Mike justified it by saying the driver took on significant risk and deserved the pay. Mike continued to distribute the money, and soon it was half as much again. He also had to set aside hush money for the 9 inmates, which was no small amount. To make matters worse, this payment needed to be made every month. Walter, unable to bear it any longer, insisted that Mike should cover the cost himself. As the two were about to come to blows, Jesse generously offered his share. Seeing this, Walter didn't want Jesse to suffer, so he temporarily conceded to Mike. But this didn't mean Walter would keep compromising. Walter was very dissatisfied with the small amount of cash left, thinking it was even less than what he earned working for Gus. Walter lacked Gus's caution and scope, and he also didn't have Gus's various channels. After Mike left, Jesse told Walter he planned to break up with his girlfriend because he didn't want to drag her down, but Walter wasn't paying attention. He was fixated on the division of the money. Jesse tried to persuade Walter, "When we made products for Gus, we produced 200 pounds a week. Now we can't even hit 50 pounds a week. With production so low, we're actually making a lot of money." But Walter's ambition was far from satisfied. So what do you think Walter will do next? Things you may never know about Breaking Bad. Walter's car was once rated one of the top 10 ugliest cars in Europe and America, and it was personally chosen by the director for Walter. The ugly exterior, the feces green color, and the perpetually unchanged spare tire, all these details highlight Walter's humble status. But ever since Walter successfully killed Gus, his ego has skyrocketed, and now he is extremely arrogant. Previously, to prevent Hank from investigating Gus's laundromat, Walter deliberately caused a car accident. Now, the car is fixed, and the repair shop owner has notified him to pick it up. After some thorough repair and maintenance, this car could run for hundreds of thousands of miles without any problems. In other words, Walter didn't need to replace the car just yet. But when he saw the hat, a symbol of Heisenberg, inside the car, Walter's pride swelled again. He felt this car no longer matched his current status.
You give me $50, and she's all yours.
You sure about this?
Sure as shoot.
Check the register.
Are you crazy?
Seeing his powerful reflection in the mirror, Walter immediately picked up a brand new Chrysler 300, a high-performance version. The car boasts a 6.4-liter V8 engine that can accelerate from 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, making it extremely aggressive. This also hints at Walter's uncontrollable, swelling ambition. Seeing the envy in his son's eyes, Walter decided to fulfill his son's wish.
Bonfire!
Walter has now lost himself in his arrogance. When Skyler returned, she found there wasn't even a parking space left. At the dinner table, Father and son boasted about their beloved cars, while Skyler worried silently. At this point, she was too afraid to voice her anger at Walter's behavior. Walter then explained to Skyler that the cars were leased, so no one would suspect anything. Even if they were purchased, they wouldn't lack the money. As he spoke, Walter placed a wad of cash on the table. Seeing the cash, Skyler knew Walter was back to his old business. Facing Skyler's questioning, Walter said he needed to make back the $600,000 given to Ted. Skyler, not wanting her son to grow up in such an environment, suggested sending Walter Jr. to a boarding school, but Walter refused. Walter reassured Skyler that despite recent events, everything was now under control and he had everything handled. The next day was Walter's 51st birthday. As usual, Skyler would prepare a delicate bacon breakfast in the shape of his age, but this time, Skyler had no enthusiasm. It was only after Walter Jr.'s repeated requests that Skyler reluctantly put it together. It was so perfunctory. Meanwhile, Lydia, under immense pressure from all sides, was recently unable to eat or sleep well. She, usually attentive to details, even wore the wrong shoes. Just as she was feeling frustrated, Mike called to warn her that the DEA would arrive in 30 seconds. Sure enough, as soon as the call ended, Hank arrived with a team. They were there to find someone named Ron. Lydia led Hank and his team to the warehouse, and another executive from Madrigal Corporation was arrested. Ron was the person Mike had planted to steal methylamine from the warehouse. This terrified Lydia. Back at her office, still shaken, Lydia told Mike about the incident. Fearing that Ron might betray her, Mike reassured her that no one would betray them and said he would arrange for someone else to transport the methylamine. Back at the DEA, Hank was focused on Gus's case. He kept complaining about how Gus, with half his face blown off and buried underground, still managed to outsmart everyone. Hank's even suspicious of Lydia now. Although Lydia seemed normal, Hank noticed her mismatched shoes. How normal could she be? As Hank was stressing over the case, his boss brought good news. Due to Gus's close ties with the DEA, George was fired, and the higher-ups decided to promote Hank. Though a promotion and raise were good news, Hank wasn't particularly excited. Thus, Hank became the head of the DEA. After finishing his workday, Walter left Jesse to clean up because he needed to go home for his 51st birthday party. Before entering, Walter checked his appearance, but when he stepped inside, the scene was far from the lively party he had imagined. The house was cold and quiet. Nothing like last year's birthday party. In just 1 year, everything seemed to have changed. Walter asked about the evening's plans, and Skyler said only Hank and Marie would be coming. What was supposed to be a grand birthday party had turned into a simple family gathering. Meanwhile, on the way over, Hank asked Marie why she seemed unhappy lately. Marie said she had promised Walter not to tell anyone about Skyler's affair with Ted. Hearing this, Hank was stunned. Dinner wasn't even finished when Walter Jr. rushed out to drive around, leaving the remaining family members each lost in their own thoughts. Making for an awkward atmosphere, Hank tried to find topics to talk about. Skyler, acting out of character, slowly walked into the pool, causing panic among the others. Fortunately, Walter pulled her out in time. Marie went to the bedroom to comfort Skyler. Outside, Hank tried to console Walter, saying that as long as they could get by, even with a little infidelity, it would be okay. He revealed that Marie had also had an affair with a psychologist named David. They really are sisters. Before they could finish their conversation, Marie emerged from the bedroom, thinking her sister was suicidal, but Hank didn't agree. He thought Skyler just needed to talk to a psychologist. Marie offered to leave David's contact information. Marie also advised Walter that it was normal for couples to have ups and downs. Marie suggested taking Walter Jr. and her daughter to stay at her place for a while so that Walter and Skyler could repair their relationship. Walter then understood his wife's intentions. After Hank and Marie left with the kids, Walter went to the bedroom, and they had a huge argument over the situation. What should have been a happy birthday turned into a disaster. With no options left, Skyler finally said something that broke Walter's heart.
This is the best I could come up with, okay? I will count every minute that the kids are away from here, away from you, as a victory. I can't go to the police. I can't stop laundering your money. I can't keep you out of this house. I can't even keep you out of my bed. All I can do is wait.
Wait for what? What are you waiting for?
For the cancer to come back.
This was the price Walter paid for his actions. Meanwhile, Lydia turned off the warehouse camera and opened the door. Jesse had been waiting for some time. They entered the warehouse, and Lydia pointed to a barrel of methylamine, telling Jesse to take it. She had already removed it from the inventory. As Jesse used the forklift to lift the barrel, Lydia noticed something underneath it.
Wait, stop! Tell me that's not what I think it is.
The next day, Jesse told Mike about the incident. Mike immediately recognized it as a tracker. The police wouldn't be this unprofessional. If it were the police, they'd place the tracker inside the barrel, not underneath it. Mike concluded that Lydia had staged the whole thing to sever ties with them. Furious, Mike decided to eliminate Lydia to prevent future problems. But women and children were Jesse's soft spot, and he began to dissuade Mike. What if Lydia wasn't behind it? They'd be burning a bridge. Jesse insisted on a vote.
The methylamine keeps flowing no matter what. We are not ramping down. We're just getting started. Nothing stops this train. Nothing.
It turned out to be obvious that Walter had the solution. As Walter was about to leave, Jesse called out to him.
You said it was your birthday, so
I left the receipt in the box in case you want to exchange it. Anyway, hey, happy birthday.